Hello friends, we'll take up one more topic of authority and bureaucracy. Again, a very important part of our syllabus, explicitly mentioned in the syllabus. And again, it also has some linkages with some other questions. For example, there is another topic related to power, and there also we find some linkages. So we'll start with this topic, but before we start it, I'll just let you know what we are going to cover. We'll understand what is power, we'll understand what is authority, how authority is linked with Weber's typology of social action, we'll see that. What is bureaucracy, we'll see that. Apart from that, we'll try to understand what are some other different kind of organizations, how efficiency is ensured in other kind of organizations. So this is going to be the coverage of this particular session. So we'll start with it. First, what we try to do, understand what is power. What do you think is power? Just think about it. What is power? Now, as per Weber, Weber has tried to define power. The first box that you can see, it has the definition of power as given by Weber. He says the chance of a man or a number of men to realize their own will in a communal action, even against the resistance of those who are participating in the action. What do you understand by this? Just try to break it into a couple of things. For example, there's a term here, communal action. Communal action, don't go into communalism, secularism, those things. When we say communal action, that means coordinated activity or collective individual. Now, indirectly, what Weber is trying to say is, it is the ability of a man or a group of men to realize their will against the resistance of some. So, if I am able to get my things done, even in the face of resistance by others, that is the meaning of power. That means I am powerful. So, it is the ability to get your things done, the ability to realize your own will in the face of resistance from others. That is power. Chance of a man to realize his or her own will in a communal action, in a coordinated activity, even against the resistance of those participating. So, there is resistance, but despite that resistance, you are able to achieve your own goal. You are able to realize your own will. That is power. Now, this kind of view of power is referred to as the conflict view of power. That means if one person has power, or even if one person is acquiring power, is becoming powerful, the other person is losing power. So it is also said to be the zero-sum game of power. One gains power, one loses power. So the sum will be zero. So zero sum game of power. We will see some other dimensions of power in the later parts of our syllabus when we cover it. But just keep in mind, it is zero sum game of power. Why? Because one person is able to realize the will, other person is not able to realize the will. So positive and negative, they are leading to zero. But Weber says that power cannot be exercised in a sustainable manner through coercion. Only through coercion you cannot exercise power for a very long duration. It is not sustainable. Just think about it. In the state of Jammu Kashmir, we have our armed forces. We have deployed lakhs of armed forces. We have, apart from the armed forces, we also have the police force. But there are terrorists. The number of terrorists will be very less. And we are using all the power. We have this coercive power with us. But despite that, there is law and order issue. So only power is not sustainable. And there are members in those places who are resisting it. Some of they are resisting it to different means. Some through ideology or some have taken up arms as well. So just coercion might not be sustainable in the long run. That is what he's trying to say. So how do you ensure that power is sustainable in the long run? What has to be done about it? Now Weber says power to be sustained in the long run must be voluntarily accepted by those on whom it is exercised. If A exerts power on B, if this exertion of power has to be sustainable in the long run, it can only happen if B also voluntarily accepts A's exercise of power over B. If B accepts A's exercise over power over B voluntarily, then only it can be sustainable. But when will it be accepted voluntarily? What is the condition? It will be accepted voluntarily only when B will think that A's exercise of power over B is just and right. If they feel that it is not just or right, they will not accept it. In that case again, it will not be sustainable. Just think about it. A traffic cop, he's the one who's trying to regulate the traffic, and people adhere to that. So in this case, what is happening? This is power being exercised, and you are recognizing it. So this is something which is sustainable. Similarly, let's say a district magistrate, he makes certain rules and regulations which you are adhering. That means you are voluntarily accepting his exercise of power, and you feel it is correct because you feel it is just and right, and you feel it is just and right because there is a particular part of the state, and there are certain rules and regulations, and that particular person, this district magistrate, has been given the authority by the state to make those rules and regulations. So that is the reason you feel it is just and right, and you are accepting those things. So when B feels that A has the right to exercise power over B, there is a particular term for it. That term is authority. Authority means when power gets institutionalized and comes to be accepted as legitimate by those on whom it is being exercised. So legitimacy plus power, this leads to authority. The manner in which legitimacy is acquired or gained by the authority, it determines the character of authority. And we will observe this in a while. So legitimacy plus power gives authority. But again, how this authority is acquired, it also depends on multiple factors. How this authority is acquired will decide the character of authority. And now what Weber wants us to do is, he had defined the different kind of social action. Social action is the basis of his studies. Now he has defined the different kind of actions of an individual, value rational, and all these things. So how these actions and how these authorities link together, that is what we want to study now. That is what Weber wants us to understand now. And that will decide the authority structures, the characters. So what are the different kind of actions and what are the corresponding authority? So on the screen, you can see three types of action. He had defined mind you 4 kinds of actions: traditional action, effective action, goal rational action, and value rational action. But you don't see that on the screen because he could not define an authority corresponding to that. Corresponding to these three actions, traditional, effective, and goal rational, he could find an authority. The fourth one he could not, so he has not talked about. So first thing, traditional action. What is traditional action? There can be a society in which the eternal yesterday governs the present. Things that used to happen in the past, they still continue. The way you used to carry out those things in the past, the same thing happens now as well. So things are done as they had been done in the past. This society is dominated by customary practices, and in this kind of society, the authority acts in accordance to the tradition, according to the customs, according to the norms. And if it is working or it is exercising its authority as per these traditions, norms, customs, then it is considered to be legitimate. So tradition is very important here, and authority is exercised as per the tradition. Now, the second kind of action, effective action. See, there can be times in which the existing society, the existing authority system breaks down. It is not able to achieve the desired goals. In those kind of situation, another kind of authority develops. It is during the situation that people start believing in the role of an extraordinary leader, extraordinary powers of a leader. Emotional bond is there between the leader and the followers. So there is this affection between the bond and the followers. On the basis of this also, there can be authority. That authority is charismatic authority. People believe, the believers believe that this particular person has some charisma and he has some divine powers, he has some extraordinary quality, and because of this quality, he can achieve certain goals. Because of his qualities, he can lead the society to a particular point. So on the basis of this emotional bond, if there is an authority, that is charismatic authority. On the basis of tradition, there is an authority, again traditional authority. Now another kind of action is goal rational action. In modern societies, our life is becoming more and more rational. We are being governed by rational principles. There has been a focus on increasing efficiency, increasing calculability, increasing the predictability, increasing control. These are all the different dimensions of being rational. You are able to precisely calculate what will be the impact. And if you are able to calculate, you might even be able to predict things. And if you are able to predict things, you can also control society. So our social life is becoming more rational, which is manifested in these forms. And if the legitimacy is on the basis of conformation to rational rules, if legitimacy is on the basis of conformation to rational rules, that kind of authority is called legal rational authority. For example, in our society also, we have multiple rules. See, according to these rules and regulations, certain people are vested with powers. For example, a judge or a tax collector, they have some specific powers. And we are also recognizing the fact that this particular person can mediate the dispute, or this particular person has the right to demand taxes from us. So we are also recognizing the fact that it's just and right. So these people are nothing but legal rational authorities. So these are the different kind of actions, and corresponding to that, we have different kinds of authority. Traditional action leads to traditional authority, effective action leads to charismatic authority, goal rational action leads to legal rational authority. So what we'll do, we'll look at all these authority structures one by one. We'll start with traditional authority. Now, what are some features of the traditional authority? Now, what are the kind of rules that you have in traditional authority? See, wherever there is traditional authority, you do not have a body of concrete rules. Traditional authority. So first we'll say traditional authority, and we look at some of the features of traditional authority. Now, what kind of rules, regulations are there in a society which has these traditional authority? Generally, they have a body of concrete rules. Rules are concrete. There is no justification for these rules. Why these rules came to being? Why these rules need to be followed? There is no such rational justification for this. Is there any hierarchy in these kind of societies when it comes if there is a society with traditional authority? Do you see any hierarchy? Generally, there is this hierarchy there, and this hierarchy is on the status of persons. Power is also not precisely defined. What kind of power a particular person in that hierarchy will have. at what position, what kind of powers needs to be exercised. All these things are not clearly mentioned, not clearly defined anywhere. But and one more thing here, the people at different positions in the hierarchy, they might have that freedom to take decisions. So they have that free grace. They're not rule bound as such. What about the officials who are imposing these kind of authority in these kind of societies? There can be an administrative staff, but this is basically a staff of personal favorites who oppose personal loyalties to those who are the head of these societies. What about the rewards? Officials are there, they're executing certain functions, but what rewards they get? In these kind of societies where you're trying to impose a traditional authority, the rewards are not necessarily fixed as salaries. At some point of time, they might be given gifts, but not necessarily they will have a fixed salary that they're getting every month or a few weeks. And the administrative work is not necessarily a career. They're not doing it for their lifetime. We'll look at some examples of traditional authority. We'll look at it in details. Don't worry. These are the basic features. Now, if you look at traditional authority, it can be divided into two types: patriarchalism and patrimonialism. And these two kind of traditional authorities, again, you'll find them in different kinds of societies. Patriarchalism is in the most simple society. Simplest of societies will have this. Generally, in these kind of societies, it is the eldest male member who is the head of the group. So it is what is happening on the basis of age. Inheritance can be a factor also. So what you're observing here is this particular authority structure is on the basis of age, gerontocratic principles. It does not have any specialized staff who enforce the will of the leader. This functions on the basis of voluntary consent. People themselves are willing to follow it. Tradition was there in the past, now also it is continuing. You do not question it back then, you are not questioning the traditions now. They do not have any formally designed rules or apparatus. Personal loyalty is very important in these kind of societies. Some of the examples here, Bushmen in Kalahari Desert, one of the examples. Apart from that, in case of India also, the rural agrarian society, joint families used to be there. So they were also patriarchal in nature. Simple family, generally the eldest member of the household who used to be the head. Maximum authority was held by this person. He was the person who used to take decisions. And now you do not have any formally designed rules. It was according to the eldest member, they used to decide the rules. And the authority used to be on the basis of gerontocratic principles. If the head of the family is there, among the sons, again some authority will be there. Eldest son will have the highest say, then the younger son, then the youngest son. So what is happening again? It is on the basis of age. Specialized staff will not be there, and all the members within the family they voluntarily agree to accept whatever rule regulations he's taking, whatever decisions he's taking. So patriarchalism is one type of traditional authority. Another kind of authority is patrimonialism. It is again a traditional authority, but it is in a slightly advanced society. Generally, this medieval kingship, sultans, in that case, in tribal chiefdom, you find patrimonialism. Now, what is the difference here? In these kind of societies, the offices they are generally inherited on the basis of inheritance. They are those who are holding offices. They have the right to issue certain commands. They might have an administrative staff, but again, these administrative staff will also be their personal favorites. Personal loyalty and choice of the leader is very important in these kind of societies. Efficiency is not necessarily the most important criteria. You might have experts in the society, but again, these leaders will not choose them. They will rather choose those people who are loyal to them. There's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of arbitrariness. How you are making decisions, how you are choosing your people around you. All these things, there is a lot of discrimination. There's no clear separation between official competence and sphere of personal competence. See, one example I can give you in present society also. This happens. Sometimes you'll find politicians they're using these chartered planes for their own private purpose. Recently, there was one governor of a state, so he wanted to go to his own place and he booked chartered flights for that, and the state had to put in the bill. Sometimes they have instances in which politicians they have allegations are there that they have used it for their own family purposes. They're going on family trips and they put it as official purpose. So this somewhere reflects that our politicians and our society still has these traditional features. So official competence, official activity is something, private activity is something. You are now putting both these things together. You're not able to segregate that. That is what happens in patrimonialism. Customary rules regulations are important. These system of rewards. If you are getting these things done, then again you should have a reward structure. That who is getting more things done should be rewarded. But those kind of things are not there. There is a lot of discrimination and arbitrariness. Tasks are also not specialized. Who is given what kind of task and who's handling what kind of task. Specialization is not the criteria on which these tasks are allotted. So this is a traditional authority. These are two examples of traditional authority. Two different ways by which you can classify traditional authority. Paternalism and patrimonialism. Keep in mind, paternalism is the oldest one. Patrimonialism in slightly advanced societies. Now, another kind of authority is charismatic authority. So what is this charismatic authority? On the basis of effective action. Keep this in mind. Now, what is charismatic authority? The root word again, charisma. Certain people are said to possess certain charisma. They might have some special characteristics. Now, charismatic authority is on the basis of certain quality of an individual's personality by virtue of which he is set apart. This is the meaning of charisma. Some people have these kind of characteristics, and people believe that they are having some supernatural characteristics. They're endowed with that. They have some exceptional powers. Sometimes people might even think that these people who are having this charisma, they might be of divine origin. They're heavenly, and because they are considered to be having all these qualities, they might even be rebel. So some people might be blessed with a charisma, and because of this charisma, they might be rebel. But how this charisma gets converted into an authority? How from charisma they are now becoming an authority in itself? How and where it develops? Generally, charismatic authority has its roots in crisis. If there is a crisis going on, people now want to have a leader who can take them out of this crisis. And if they found some person who has these unique characteristics, this person can become that charismatic leader. So it is generally dependent on times of crisis. And this charismatic authority, it can exist in all types of societies, not necessarily only one kind of society, multiple societies. At different points of time, they might face crisis, and people might want to have these kind of charismatic leaders. And here, the followers of this charismatic leader, they form an emotional bond. Spontaneously and voluntarily, they start obeying his commands, his or her commands, because of this emotional bond. Keep this in mind. Effective action. Charismatic authority is on the basis of effective action. So there is an emotional bond between the followers and the charismatic leader. Because of that, they immediately start following his commands, they obey his commands. So we'll see, just like in traditional authority, we'll also look at some features of charismatic authority in a society or in any organization which is being run because of charismatic authority. You do not see any system of rules regulations, formal rules regulations. These legal principles, you do not find them. They might be there, but you do not find formal legal principles. There's no such thing as appointment, no such thing as career, no such thing as promotion. Career means you join there and you are serving it full time. Those kind of concepts are not there. There's no such thing as salary or benefit. There's no rigid hierarchy. There's no definite sphere of authority or competence. It can extend anywhere. The disciples or followers, they tend to live primarily in a communal relationship with the leader. They're all part of the same community. They're together in this thing. The administrative staff also does not consist of officials. They're also not technically trained. They're not chosen on the basis of their social privilege or because of their personal loyalty. Rather, they're chosen in terms of the charismatic quality of its members. On the basis of charisma, again, they are chosen. Example: the prophet will have his own disciples. The warlord will have his own henchmen. So warlord is a charismatic authority and he will have people around him. Similarly, the prophet, he has that charismatic authority and people will be around him. So these are some features of any charismatic authority. So you have seen many of these features now. Some of these things you might not be able to relate. I mean, why have you mentioned these things that they are not chosen on these basis or they're not chosen or they're not technically trained? We are looking at these features because now we look at some other kind of authority now. In that you will see that there are a lot of differences when it comes to these lines, these axes. So there it will be different. So once you cover legal rational authority, you will be better able to appreciate all these features that we have already talked about. So we'll again look at some more things here. It is said that charismatic authority has revolutionary potential. See, charismatic authority is rooted to a crisis. So generally, charismatic authority is born because of a crisis, and this leader is not bound by any rules regulations. We saw just now that there is no such rules regulations here. And since you are not bound by any such rules regulation, and people have immense faith, belief in your potential, these kind of leaders have the ability to bring about far-reaching changes. They can renounce the past and they can go against the traditions. They don't need to follow the traditions. So that is the reason most of these revolutions have been because of charismatic leaders. For example, Lenin. So they have this revolutionary potential. But the problem here is these kind of structures, these kind of authority, these kind of organizations, they are unstable. They are a product of crisis situation. People require them to handle these crises. But just think about it. If the crisis gets resolved, what will be the role of the charismatic leader? They might not have any role. In fact, if the crisis gets resolved, in that case again they have to get converted into some other forms of authority. Charismatic authority is there only because of the crisis. But if that root has been resolved now, what is their role now? So in such a situation, what will happen is this particular charismatic authority now has to be converted into either a legal authority or a traditional authority. This process by which a charismatic authority gets converted into these things is referred to as routinization of charisma. So if a charismatic authority succeeds in achieving the goal, then they have to be routinized. This charisma has to be routinized to either legal authority or a traditional authority. And in case they're not successful, in that case it is referred to as a failed charisma. People no longer remember them. So either way, either you are successful, you are failure, your value, your significance is going to decline. And again, even if they have become successful, routinization of charisma is taking place. Then also they need to find out some potential successor in future. The charismatic leader had that charisma with him, but that charisma might not be there with other people who are in the line to succeed this person. So in that case, there is definitely going to get discontinuity. So this is the challenge that charismatic authorities, charismatic organizations face. So that is the reason they are turned unstable. But yes, there have been some instances in which some solutions have been found. For example, one mechanism is you transform the charisma of the individual into the charisma of the office. So the individual's charisma has been translated into the charisma of the office. That means that office is now supposed to have those charismatic qualities now. What we do here, generally, one of the examples is transmission of charisma of the royal authority by coronation. So a particular leader at some point of time, he would have been the king, and he would have had that charismatic authority at that point of time. But they might have known that again, how will you ensure the continuation of these kind of charismatic authority? So that particular position, whatever position he's holding, maybe he's the king over there. So what is happening here is the charismatic authority or the charisma of the individual, that particular person, has been shifted to the charisma of the office that he was holding. So again, if a new successor comes to that office, there will be elaborate ceremony for that, and that way again, people will start having certain perception about that particular position, not just about the individual. So this way, charisma of an individual is transformed into the charisma of the office. That way, continuity and succession can be maintained. Example of some genuine charisma, Gandhiji, Lenin, they were charismatic leaders. Example of some failed charisma, Hitler is an example of failed charisma. He was a charismatic leader, but he could not, at the end of the day, he could not continue it. So Hitler and all these people, they were the examples of failed charisma. So this is about charismatic authority. So next kind of authority that we'll see is the legal rational authority. So what we'll do here is we'll look at legal rational authority, and we'll also try to understand bureaucracy. Now, what is this legal rational authority? Already we have seen on what action this legal rational authority is based. Now, it is being said that there is a gradual movement of all societies to this kind of authority, and it is being said that it becomes inevitable. If you are moving towards an advanced industrial civilization, you are bound to move towards a legal rational authority. You have to do that because in these authorities, these industries and all, for maintaining these things, you need these kind of structures. Europe was the first place where you experienced this, but gradually it is shifting from the European mainland to other parts of the world as well. And this particular authority is characterized by preponderance of rational action. Rational action is the most predominant form of social behavior in these kind of organizations, in these kind of societies. It is on the basis of acceptance of a set of impersonal rules. This authority, it's a legal authority, it's a rational authority, and we will understand why it is rational, why it is legal. So what is happening here is, in this particular kind of authority, there are a set of rules. According to that rules, some people have the right to exercise power, and others, they are recognizing the fact that these particular official or post leaders, they can exercise power. So on the basis of the rules, this kind of authority is formed. But keep in mind, these rules are impersonal rules. They are not personal rules. The way a father deals with his son or his daughter, it will have some personal considerations. But the rules here, they are not of such type. It is impersonal, it will be applicable for everyone. So those who are, some people are there who have certain authority because of these rules and regulations, and then others, they accept the legal framework which supports this authority. They accept the imposition of power of certain people. Some of the examples you can see, for example, tax collector, tax inspector, a police officer, a judge, they're all examples of this legal rational authority. They have been given certain powers because of the position they hold, and people like us who are not holding those positions, they also respect those powers. For example, if a tax inspector is asking us for our tax details, we might be obliged to give our details to them. We recognize that it is just a right for that individual to ask us for these things. Apart from this term legal, there's another word here, rational. Why this authority is called rational? So again, this authority is on the basis of certain rules, impersonal rules, and these rules are also rational. That is the reason. Why these rules are rational? These rules are constructed for the attainment of a particular goal, and they also specify the means by which these goals can be attained. That is the reason it is called rational. For example, in India, we have different laws, different rules, regulations. Now, again, they might have certain larger objectives. They have been constructed for attaining certain objectives. For example, our constitution, it talks about so many ideals. Take the preamble, for example, it talks about so many ideals. And again, within the constitution also we find out so many other ideas that we want to establish: socialist, democratic, state, republic. All these things are there. So our rules aim to ensure this. So that is the reason we are considering it as rational. So there is a larger goal over there. And the means are also mentioned, which means have to be used to attain these consciously designed goals. So these are some features of the legal rational authority. Now we will look at it in details now through this particular institution, the institution of bureaucracy. So the question you might have now is, what is bureaucracy? What was the main purpose of bureaucracy? Now, legal rational authority, it produces a particular kind of organizational structure. That structure is called bureaucracy. Weber defines what is a bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a large-scale organization rationally designed to coordinate the activity of many individuals in the pursuit of organizational goals, and it also coordinates the work to be performed in organization in the form of offices. So bureaucracy is a large-scale organization. It is on the basis of some rationality. It is rationally designed. It has to coordinate the activity of many individuals in the pursuit of the organizational goals. It also has to coordinate the work performed in the organization in the form of offices. So coordinate the work of the offices, coordinate the work of the individual, and at the end of the day, you have to attain the organizational goals. And rationality is the basis. So this is what bureaucracy is. Large-scale organization on the basis of rationality coordinates the efforts of the organization, of the offices of the organization, and the individuals. And aim here is to attain the organizational goals, achieve those organizational goals. So bureaucracy can also be considered to be an ideal type of legal rational authority. Different variations can be there in it. So we just consider it as an ideal type here. Bureaucracy is a rational action in institutionalized form. So these are some interpretations of bureaucracy. We will understand bureaucracy in details now. What are some features of bureaucracy? Very important. And here, just keep this in mind when you are understanding this bureaucracy. Also, the things that you see out, whether our bureaucratic structure, they also have these kind of mechanisms or not. Again, understanding this thing is not only important from your optional perspective, it can also be important in your general studies paper 1, paper 2, the governance part. Okay, so try to link it with this. Now, in a bureaucracy, any complex task is broken down into smaller tasks, and again, there will be officials who have to handle these tasks. So one task is broken down and allocated to different officials. Now, these officials, again, among the officials who are part of the bureaucracy, among them there is a hierarchy. Not everyone is at the same position. It's a hierarchical mechanism, and within this hierarchy, now there is a chain of command and responsibility. For example, those who are at the top, they will give commands, they will give direction to people at the bottom, and the people at the bottom have to follow it. There is also responsibility. If you have been given a task, you are responsible for the task. And you are accountable. Any individual is accountable to his immediate supervisor, and he is accountable not only for the work he has been assigned, but also for the work which had been assigned to people at the bottom who are below him. So his own work he is responsible for the work of subordinates also he is responsible. So there is hierarchy, there is chain of command, there is responsibility, and you are responsible not only for your own work, for the work of your subordinates as well. Next important feature of bureaucracy is formalistic impersonality. Officials perform their duties in the spirit of formalistic impersonality. Whatever task has been given to you, you are doing it without any hatred or loving passion. Your own personal preferences, likings, dislikings, all these things have to be kept apart. That is a separate area of competence now. You have to perform your task in formalistic impersonality. It is not personal any longer. Your personal sentiments, emotions, feelings should not be hindering your performance here. Activities of a bureaucrat is governed by the rules, not personal consideration. And because of this, it is being said that actions are rational. They are not effective. Not on the basis of affection, but on the basis of rationality. How does appointment and promotion take place? Now, bureaucrats are appointed on the basis of some technical knowledge or expertise. And again, here, this technical knowledge and expertise should be such that the goals of the organization can be met. Because at the end of the day, bureaucracy is trying to do that, attainment of the goals of the organization. So on that basis, you are recruiting someone. It can be through some test. Generally, we have many countries that tests. In India also, UPSC. It is the organization which is conducting this exam before the job apply. Now, this kind of job is a career. This occupation is a career. That means it's a full-time profession now. And in this, promotion is on the basis of seniority. Keep this in mind. In India also, our bureaucrats are promoted on the basis of seniority. There has to be clear separation between private and official spheres of competence. There are two different things. The example that I gave you when we were discussing about patrimonial. Okay, so he should understand that this is for this purpose. If I have been given a car, if let's say I am a district magistrate, I have been given a car for official purpose, it should be used for official purpose. It should not be used for dropping the kids to the school. That is a different area. So there has to be separation between private and official sphere of competence. So these are the features of the bureaucracy. Complex tasks broken down into smaller tasks given to officials. Now the officials, they are not arranged like this. They are arranged in hierarchy. There is a chain of command. There is a chain of responsibility. Every officer is accountable to his immediate supervisor for his own work and for the work of his own subordinates. Officials have to perform the tasks in the spirit of formalistic impersonality. Appointment is on the basis of some technical competence or expertise. Once you have been appointed, throughout your life till the retirement age, you are serving the organization. And promotion is on the basis of seniority. Separation between private and official sphere of competence. See, here you might ask the question: if technical, what is the technical knowledge and expertise that is required in case of India? Just think about it. There are some minimum qualifications. Not everyone can write civil service examination. You have to have at least a particular qualification, graduation. You should have some degree. So that is the minimum qualification required. In some countries, they might require even higher qualification. Maybe someone, for example, if you're talking about if you want a particular position has to be filled. Let's say in the health ministry there is a vacancy. They might require health experts. Maybe they look for a doctor over there. So again, varies from countries, but some minimum qualifications are there. Now, what is the advantage of having a bureaucracy? Now, Weber says that bureaucracy is the most efficient organization in attaining large-scale organizational goals. Most efficient, and this efficiency is because of its technical superiority. Just compare this legal rational authority with traditional authority and with the other forms of authority, charismatic authority. Here you are having people who are recruited on the basis of some qualifications. They follow certain rules and regulations, and everything is on the basis of rationality. So that is the reason they are technically superior than other forms. They have skills. They're recruited on the basis of merit. They have technical competence, personal emotions, personal sentiments, interests. They're all kept apart, and you are just focusing on the attainment of the goals. Rules are also designed in such a manner. I told you right. Rules are rational. So rules are also decided or designed in such a manner that the objectives of the organizations are furthered, and there's greater precision and there's greater speed as compared to traditional authority or charismatic authority. Friction is less, cost can be low. This is the reason Weber feels it is the most efficient organization for getting large-scale organization rules. And that is also the reason why most of the countries they have proper bureaucracy in place. But not everything is rosy here. There have been many criticism of the role of bureaucracy as well. So there have been certain disadvantages associated with bureaucracy. For example, there is strict control of human freedom when it comes to bureaucracy. The bureaucrats are supposed to behave in a particular manner. They have to set their liking and disliking apart. So it can restrict their freedom. This uniform rational procedures can be an hindrance to creativity and spontaneity. Individuals' initiative can also get curtailed. So it might lead to a scenario where we are creating specialists without any spirit. This can also happen. So bureaucrats many times they are just fixated with the rules and regulations. They get stuck in the specialized routine. They might get trapped over there, and they're working in these specialized routines. They keep on working, but sometimes they might not have the answer that how their action, how their activity, how their job, and how the organization is linked together. There's little awareness of the relationship between the job and the organization. And again, bureaucrats are fixated with order, uniformity and order. That is the primary goal here. Now, sometimes if there is any protest or sometimes there is any action which can lead to make this order unstable, there's a lot of resentment here. For example, you might have taken a decision or that you need to create a development project somewhere, but again there might be some conflicting news. This cost of the development might be very high, environment might get impacted, people might get impacted, they have to be displaced. So in case there is any resistance here, so this is basically viewed as a resistance to order by the bureaucrats. So again, there can be repercussions. So many times bureaucrats they become dependent on the security provided by this structure. The hierarchy is there, it's a career, it is very difficult to throw them out. So they become extremely dependent on the security. So in case for a moment if this order is wavered, they start feeling helpless, nervous, and cowardly. That also happens. The example that I gave you, someone is questioning the order, it will have repercussions on them, and they want to fight back. And sometimes it supports the vested interest rather than working for the people, working for the public. They might have their own interest. For example, bureaucrats are supposed to take decisions, but let's say there is, for example, this last government, UK2 government, and the later part of the government, what is happening? Many bureaucrats are not taking any decisions. There are a lot of allegations of corruption at this point of time. So many bureaucrats they feel that if they start taking decisions again, even if they do not have any malified intention, again you don't know what will be the repercussion. There can be allegations of corruption. So better don't take any decision. That is better for us. Why should we have a careers? And it led to a situation of policy paralysis. No one is taking decision. And if you're not taking decision, public's interest will get impacted. So sometimes they also look at their own vested interest, which can be very costly, which can go against the interest of the public. So these are some critical issues with bureaucracy. Now, just you can look at two statements. Quite frequently used when it comes to bureaucracy. The bureaucrat wanted to work in a calling, we are forced to do so. What should have been a calling? But now you are just fixated with the rules and regulations. So it is not a calling anymore. It is just you're just forced to do that. So how is it related with bureaucracy? People are forced to work, and the human freedom, human spirit that is getting crushed in this process. So instead of calling, it has become the force now. Another statement: care for external goods should only lie on the shoulders of the saint like a light cloak, which can be thrown aside at any moment. But the fate decreed that the cloak should become an iron cage. So what was the main aim of bureaucracy? To attain some larger goals. But now, because of the structure, because of the different mechanisms, this is now restricting the potential of the bureaucrats, potential of the individual. So instead of the cloak, which was supposed to be light, it has become an iron cage, fixated with rules, regulations, and tapism. Understand the meaning of these two statements. You can note it down and you can think about it whenever you're free. These kind of statements can sometimes be important from governance perspective, can also be important from ethics perspective. Next thing, what is Weber's view regarding the bureaucracy? He has talked about all these things. Again, he's trying to sum it up. He's saying that it is essential for any large-scale industrial society. These large-scale industrial societies have to be done. They require organization, and these organization structure, the kind of structure they require is bureaucracy. State and economic enterprises could not function effectively without bureaucratic control. So for effective functioning of state and economic enterprise, you need to have bureaucratic control, and it is indispensable. You cannot remove them. Inevitable. You do not have any other organization which can fit in their role, and they represent the most complete and effective institutionalization of power. So he feels that it is the most powerful and it will remain the most powerful instrument of the first order. So bureaucracy is inevitable, especially in a large society. In a large society, bureaucracy is inevitable. There is no other organization which is as efficient or as effective as the bureaucracy. But he is also identifying some flaws here. He knows that this is the best form of the best model that we have. But bureaucracy also has some inherent challenges. And he says there are two major issues, two main dangers are there. First problem is the issue when a crisis emerges. For example, if there is a disaster or if there is any particular issue which has not been mentioned in the rule. The bureaucrats are provided different kind of training for different kind of scenarios. But you cannot find out all the possible scenarios. Let's say we are giving them training for 5 scenarios, but you don't know social life is unexpected. So tomorrow a sixth, they have to go 7th issue might come up. So how will they handle the 6th or the 7th issue? So that becomes a problem. Since they have not been trained for this and the rules and regulations that are there, they might not also be able to resolve these problems. So he says that during the time of crisis, leadership will be ineffective since they're just trained to follow order and they're just trained to conduct routine operations. So routine procedures they can do, but something which is out of the blue, how are they going to handle it? Another key issue is the top bureaucrats. They might get influenced by capital interests and they can influence the policies accordingly. So that capitalists they get benefited. How money power can also influence bureaucrats. That is the challenge here. So again, it will go against the interest of the public. It might go against the interest of the country, the nation. So the goals that we had set out to achieve, we might not achieve because of this. So these were the two key issues he feels are inherent in bureaucracy. But he thinks that there are ways by which you can address it. He says we can avoid this problem if we have a very strong parliamentary control over the state bureaucracy. So you have politicians and you have bureaucrats. The bureaucrats have to report to these politicians, and these politicians are accountable to the people. People only elect the politicians. So if bureaucrats are not functioning properly, then there will be repercussions on the politicians. They might not get elected in the next elections. So ensure strong parliamentary control over state bureaucracy. Professional politicians, they should handle the various departments. They should hold key positions in these departments. We should encourage strong and effective leadership. And now since politicians are controlling the bureaucracy, so they will be providing a very strong and effective leadership to these bureaucrats. And decisions will be better. And politicians are public figures. They are subject to public scrutiny. Also, they are subject to criticism of the opposition. This way, there will be accountability. So goals of the organization will also be met. At the same time, the challenges that we saw, the issues that we are seeing, that also will be taken care of. So Weber thinks this is going to be the solution, subjecting the state bureaucracy to the politicians, parliamentary control. So this is what Weber had suggested. We will look at some other perceptions, some other criticisms of bureaucracy. And we'll also look at some other approaches, how bureaucracy can be observed, or how bureaucracy can be more efficient when it is more efficient. So first thing, Robert K. Merton, he also talks about bureaucracy. And he feels that there are a lot of dysfunctions associated with bureaucracy. You remember, Robert K. Merton talks about function, he talks about non-function, he also talks about dysfunctions. He had given this functional paradigm, how these researchers, if they're using functional approach, how they should use it. He had given those steps. So he had said that if the negative consequence is there, then it is referred to as dysfunction. So he's saying bureaucracy might have some dysfunctions. What are these dysfunctions? He's saying that bureaucrats, they're trained in a particular manner. They're given different kind of scenarios, they're trained to handle these kind of scenarios. But sometimes there can be a situation which is not there in the rule. In that case, they might not be able to handle that. Just like what Weber had identified. Weber also talked about two issues. One of the issues was this. So bureaucrats, they're just trained to comply to different kind of rules. So they're inflexible, they're timid. So they will not be able to handle these kind of situations. They have not been taught to improvise or innovate. Innovation is also not a feature of bureaucracy. And also the promotions are just there to reward conformity. If you are conforming to the rules, if you are following all the rules and regulations, you are considered to be very good. But in case you are just conforming to the rules, that means you are not bending any rules. Sometimes you might require to bend rules. So bureaucrats might not be able to do it. Your incentive structures are such, your training is such, the rules are such. It will prevent them from attaining all these situations which are not there in the rule. For example, take a scenario. Many times you would have read about these things. There is an important, there's a very important person who is traveling, some dignity. So in case when they travel, the road is blocked. Okay. So sometimes what happens even if there is an ambulance, a person who is in a very critical stage, a patient is very critical stage, they don't let the ambulance pass. So here there's a rule. Yes, others should not be allowed to travel in the road. That is the rule. But you need to bend rule, because saving the life of an individual might be more important. So you're just getting fixated with the rule. Fetish is there for following the rules. So again, that particular bureaucrat who is not allowing the ambulance to pass, he's showing conformity. But in this process, the larger goal, you're losing sight of the larger goal. Sometimes the official goals gets displaced. You're just fixated with the rules. Rules becomes an end in itself. Rules should have been the means to attain some goal, but rules here are the end in itself. So the goals get displaced now. You're just conforming to official regulation, and this leads to a situation of a red tag. So main idea was to provide efficient services to the people. And how do you provide the services? For that, you have made rules. But now so many rules are there that following the rules becomes an end in itself. And indirectly, what happens? Efficient service is not provided to the people. Then there's another issue is the conflict between impersonality. So here in bureaucracy, a lot of importance emphasis is given on impersonality. So sometimes there can be a friction between the official and the public. So a bureaucrat has to behave in a particular manner. Impersonal behavior has to be there. But new organization, bureaucrat, or all these government organizations. But in certain scenario, they might also have to show some sort of emotions. Just think about any government organization or a government hospital, let's say. Now, patients expect some sort of emotion out there from the management. Maybe that can be some sort of emotional satisfaction. But again, the government officials are not supposed to behave. They should be behaving impersonally. So because of that, again, there can be conflict sometimes. Friction can be there with the public and the officials. So these are the dysfunctions identified by murder situation, which are not there in the rule book. Fixation for rules can shift the goals, and the conflict because of impersonality. Now, we will look at another dimension here. We'll try to understand formal and informal structures. Which kind of organization will have more efficiency? The formal organization having this chain of hierarchy, clear chain of command, or informal organization. So there has been studied by Peter Block and Alvin Wonder, and they are studying different formal and informal organizations, and they are now giving us some suggestions. Which organization will have more efficiency? Just think about it in these terms. Now we have been talking about bureaucracy for some time. We'll see how efficiency can be improved. So Peter Block, he's studying the Federal Enforcement Agency in Washington, and he feels that if an organization has both formal and informal structure, then efficiency of the organization can be better. Only if formal structures are there, then it can be a hindrance towards attainment of organizational goals. Formal, informal, what is formal? All these hierarchy and all these things are there. Advanced rules are there. Informal, all these things, rules, norms, regulations are not there. So he says, as per his study, that there should be both formal as well as informal structure in organization. It can increase efficiency. Now Alvin Wonder, he had studied gypsum plant in the US. Again, gypsum plant has multiple units. It has a mining unit, it has a processing unit, it has other units as well. So he's studying all these units, and he concludes that formal structures are not always effective in attaining organizational goals. If you want to attain the organizational goal, whether we need a formal structure or informal structure will depend on the kind of activity you are pursuing. Weber had said formal organizations are best to attain large organizational goals. Here, what we are seeing some counter to that. Peter Block, he's saying some kinds of combination is effective. Alvin Wonder is saying it depends what kind of activity you are pursuing. In the gypsum plant, there was a mining unit, there was a processing unit. In the mining unit, it was more effective if there was an informal organizational setup. Mining unit, just keep in mind, there are different kind of crisis situations can be there. You're not all the things, all the issues that can surface up and crop up, they will not fall into these rule book. Things can vary, things can change. So in such a scenario, an informal organization structure might be better. But processing unit, there everything is fixed. In that case, if you're having a formal organization structure, it will be better. So depending on the kind of activity, depending on the nature of the goals, you should decide whether you should have formal organization or informal organization. So when you are learning all these things, keep this in mind what Weber had said. Weber it was the bureaucracy formal organization is the best mechanism. But here they are trying to counter that. Now another way by which organizations have been classified is mechanistic systems and organic systems. And here what has happened, Tom Burns and James Stalker, they studied some of the English and Scottish firms in the electronics industry. And they are also trying to find out the relation. Whether if you have rigid structures, is it beneficial? If you have flexible structures, is it beneficial? Now, what they're saying, what kind of organizations you can classify as mechanistic systems? Now, these mechanistic systems are those systems in which the bureaucratic organizations are formal and rigid, and they're termed as mechanistic. Now, in case scenario is predictable, you know that these are the possible scenarios. Routine situations are there, they're very well. But in case there is a situation, or in case there is a sector which is rapidly changing, for example, this technological sector, it keeps on changing. Every few years, something will come up. Android versions keep on changing. The technology is changing, 3G, 4G, 5G. So, these mechanistic organizations which have a very formal rigid structure, they are not good for these kind of sectors, technological sectors, commercial situations. So, and in present society, modern society, change is the hallmark. So, these kind of organizations might not contribute much to a modern society, or they might not add much value. And again, if you look at the future, they might not have a very important role. So this is mechanistic organization. What is organic type of organization? In this, the responsibility is not clearly defined. The hierarchies are also not rigid. And here, everyone is motivated to employ skills. You are not supposed to carry out some predetermined operations. You are motivated to solve issues here. Problems are there, you have to solve it. And in case there is a problem, all those who have knowledge can pitch in and resolve it. It is not that it will come from the top. Only the top management will decide who is going to resolve it. That is not the case. Here, any problem is that anyone who has the knowledge can pitch in and help in solving it. Hierarchy is blurred. Communication travels in all directions. Generally, in these mechanistic organization, it will travel like this, top to bottom. But these kind of things are not there. Top management does not have the sole prerogative over decisions. Others can also play an equally important part. So these are flexible organizations. You can refer to them as flat organizations. So no clear delineation of responsibility, no rigid hierarchy. Everyone is motivated to pitch in, solve issues. And again, not handling issues is not the sole prerogative of the top management. And these kind of organizations might play a very important role in the future because mechanistic organizations they cannot handle change. These are organizations which can handle change, which can solve problems. Now, one thing Weber had told, he had stated that we should subjugate the bureaucracy to parliamentary control. So politicians should be there, and politicians, these bureaucrats are accountable to the politicians are accountable to the public. Now again, this has also been studied. Now Weber had talked about two problems that he sees in bureaucracy, and he also tried to give a solution. He had said that bureaucrats should be under the control of the parliament. So politicians should be here. Bureaucrats should be responsible to the parliamentarians, to the politicians, and politicians are responsible to the people. And people again through electoral processes decide the politicians, though they're representatives. Now, this has also been studied. Whether subjugating bureaucrats to any political to the politicians can give us the desired results. For example, there has been a study by Lipset and there's also a study by Selznick, and they're just studying this problem, whether we can control the bureaucracy. So Lipset, he studies a particular province in Canada. He's looking at certain government institution. He observed that there was a right-wing party before. There was a change in the government. Now it is now it is controlled by the now it is being ruled by the left-wing party. Now they observe that when the left-wing party comes into power, they want to bring some radical reforms. So they are willing to bring about, so take some action. But the bureaucracy is entrenched. Bureaucracy is not allowing them to bring about these reforms. They're stonewalling all the policies. The politicians they are trying to bring about some changes, but here they have installed a stonewall. They're not letting these policies to come to being. In fact, in private, many of these bureaucrats used to boast that they are the ones running the department, and they used to call these policies, which was initiated by the left-wing party, as harebrained ideas. So here, what is happening is people's representatives appointed as ministers, they could not control the bureaucracy. They seemed ineffective. In India, also, you might have seen these instances. Not much change happens even if political parties change, because again, party maintained by the bureaucrats. Another study is by Philip Selznick. The study is on the Tennessee Valley Authority in the US, again another public organization. Now, this organization wanted to initiate programs for the poor people. But what is happening here is the people who are initiating the programs are part of this, the college students. Now, they themselves have belonged to a particular background, the kind of schools they have been to, the kind of colleges they have been to. These are all somehow or other promoting policies which are not favoring the poor. So college students were not suited to think in terms of the poor, and they're not able to think in terms of the poor because of all the influence around. So this policy is indirectly helping the rich farmers. So the final goal of the organization is not being met. Because again, other factors can be there. How the ideological factors, how educational factors, how the composition of your those who are going to implement, they can also impact your final result. Now, another case study, a study by A.R. Bandyopadhyay. Now, this will also help us understand whether bureaucracy is efficient or not. And with this, we can easily sum up the role of bureaucracy in present society. Now, this particular study is about land reforms in India. India underwent land reforms. So, one of the part of the land reform was abolition of the intermediary class, the zamindari class. This was the class which did not cultivate the land, but they used to get collected revenues. The land, they had ownership of the land as a consequence of permanent settlement during the colonial times. Now, what did we do under land reform? One was abolition of these laws. Then some land ceilings was established. That means beyond a particular limit, you cannot have land with you. Now, whatever extra land is there, it was identified and it was supposed to be redistributed to those who are landless. So, all over India, some 12% of the land was identified to be redistributed. But after this, you just find only 1% of land that was redistributed. And only in the state of West Bengal, this was 7%. So, all states are below 12%, and not even near 12%, just 1%. Not even 10% of the targets they could achieve. But West Bengal was able to do it. So, how come the same bureaucracy, our bureaucracy, they're all appointed by the government, central government, UP does that. So, how come bureaucracy was effective in one state, but it is not effective in other states? That is the question. So, here again, the success lies on two factors. There was political will and there was also mobilization of the beneficiary. Those who were these landless, those who were the poor, they were also mobilized, and there was political will. Because again, they had a communist left government. So, bureaucracy can be successful. It also depends on some other circumstances. And in India also, there are different states, and different states have achieved different levels of success along different lines. For example, when it comes to cooperatives, some states have achieved great heights. When it comes to healthcare education, some states have done really well. So, what we need to say here is bureaucracy can play an important role. In certain states, this, for example, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, healthcare might have been the priority. In Tamil Nadu, healthcare is the priority. So, bureaucrats have delivered over there. Similarly, in Kerala, education is the priority. Bureaucrats have delivered over there. But bureaucrats alone might not be able to. They require other factors as well. Bureaucracy can be a very efficient organization, but it cannot be the only organization. It requires other factors as well. So, with this, we can sum up our learning on authority and bureaucracy as per Weber. We look at some more dimensions related to authority, power, as we discuss about power later on in our syllabus. So, in this particular chapter, understand what is power, what is authority, what are the features of authority, what are the different kinds of authority, then how different actions are linked with different kinds of authorities, what are the features of all these different types of authority. Next one, bureaucracy, legal natural authority. You should understand that in detail. You should understand bureaucracy in details. And again, what are some limitations over there, and what are some of the other approaches to understand bureaucracy? Which organization is more efficient? Formal organization, informal organization, mechanistic organization, organic organization. So, this sums up our learning on authority and bureaucracy. Thank you.